Cars is the greatest Pixar movie ever made. Yeah, no intro, no meme, no catchphrase. This movie is awesome, and you need to know that. And look, don't think I'm not aware about that statement being outrageous, but I'm sure by the end of this video you'll be on my side. To bring you up to speed, Cars is a 2006 computer animated film and the seventh from Pixar. The film was conceived by the legendary John Lasseter, who directed the film and helped write the screenplay. The film was nominated for Best Animated Feature that year and grossed over $460 million against a $120 million budget. Coupled with Disney's extraordinary efforts to market and merchandise the film, it has become one of the most profitable media franchises on the planet, and one of the most lucrative for Disney themselves after Toy Story, Marvel, Star Wars, and so on. So with all of that money generated from this one film, you'd think there'd be a huge following for it, right? Well, in probably one of the most tragic events in history, you'd be surprised to know that many don't look back on this film too fondly, with critics choosing to laud Pixar's filmography from later in the decade. I'm going to be honest, guys, this is flat out unacceptable. So while I explain why I love this movie so much, I'll also make the effort to point out why literally everyone, including you, yes, you, why you and the rest of the internet is wrong about this film. Let's get to it. The film's story is focused on the rookie sensation, Lightning McQueen, played by Owen Wilson. Over the course of the first act, we learn everything about this guy, from his posture, his intoxicating confidence, to his ever-so-iconic catchphrase, ka-chow. We also learn about the characters in McQueen's racing life, including the King, who is literally played by Richard Petty, the King, a heel racer named Chick Hicks, played by Michael Keaton, and his transporter, Mac, played by John Ratzenberger. But just from the first race alone, we're able to know who Lightning McQueen is. We learn that his overconfidence and cult of personality has caused him to fire his own crew chief. All of his pit crew hates him for his personality. He treats his competitors with ill regard, and at his core, he is someone who lives only for simple pleasures. He makes silly poses for crowds. He taunts cameras. He loves it when his fangirls flash him. He fantasizes about being sponsored by Dynaco so that he can have prestige and ditch his Rust-eze sponsorship, which is mainly corroborated by people he is shown to intensely dislike. He desperately wants to win the Piston Cup, his most prevailing goal in life. And Mac, he treats the one guy who looks like he actually cares the most about him like shit. Chick Hicks might be the nastiest driver on the road, but arguably, McQueen may be the most vapid racer on the track. He'll go out on a limb to predict that he won a race when he gets into a three-way tie. He'll blow his own tires on the track just to avoid his pit crew slowing him down, and he'll treat his most passionate fans with apathy and disdain. The closest we ever see to McQueen ever becoming even slightly self-aware is when Harv makes him begin to think that his lack of any real friends has affected him. His recklessness and selfishness has only put him in compromised positions, like forcing Mac to drive straight through to California, which indirectly causes the two to get separated and McQueen to wind up getting lost in Radiator Springs. We learn so much about this world, and more importantly, so much about McQueen just from the opening act of this film alone. More than any other film, really. There's so many great side characters with so much good voice talent in this movie, it's unreal. All of them are endearing and reflect a microcosm of different types of Americans you'll find across the country. None of them feel like caricatures. They all grow to become friends with Lightning McQueen. And yes, even after he ransacked their small town, even after he proved to be selfish and remorseless, even after he was ignorant to their history and their plight, and that's what really makes the second act so great. It's fully dedicated to humbling the character of Lightning McQueen. But there's three really important characters that I want to talk about because they elevate this film to a whole nother level. Mater, played by Larry the Cable Guy, is not only the film's comic relief, but he becomes McQueen's best friend. Through their introductions to each other and their eventual banter, to McQueen learning that those rusty old cars he once hated are some of the nicest folks out there. After the chase scene with Frank the Combine, the moment where Mater tells McQueen he's actually his best friend is a big moment in the film. Sally, played by Bonnie Hunt, who's the town's local attorney, acts as a litigator against McQueen's destruction of Radiator Springs, helping him get sentenced to community service. And throughout their time together, McQueen brings out her sweeter side, and McQueen learns of what happened to the historic Route 66 and its inhabitants. Their tender moments and romance are integral to McQueen's redemption arc. But no character is as important to McQueen's character arc than Doc Hudson, played by Paul Newman in his final film role. Doc Hudson acts primarily as a foil character to Lightning McQueen. While McQueen is confident, selfish, and a show-off, Doc is introverted, wise, and does services for the citizens of Radiator Springs. McQueen makes it known to the whole town that he is a famous race car, while Doc keeps his past life as the fabulous Hudson Hornet, a car that won 3 Piston Cups in his prime, a secret. When we see these two characters have friction, it's because their disagreements are representative of how McQueen is rejecting becoming the best person he can be because of his pride. Even when he witnesses Doc racing around Carburetor Canyon in secret. This all comes to a head at the end of the second act, where for the first time in a long time, Radiator Springs is alive again thanks to Lightning McQueen. Now that he's humbled himself, learned that there's more to life than racing and fueling an unending ego trip, he and his close friends can bask in delight at the nightlife of Radiator Springs. And for once, everyone is happy. But then, a misstep occurs. About as quickly as McQueen finds himself in Radiator Springs, his real life comes haunting him to bring him back to that oh-so-important final race in California. There's a lot of poetic vulgarity in this scene. A man on his way to attaining happiness unwittingly gained it along the way, only to have it brutally ripped from him. I think the award for saddest part of this scene is up in the air. McQueen and Sally exchanging last glances as the trailer closes with the soulless portrait of McQueen is incredibly disheartening. The fact that Mater didn't get to say goodbye, or Doc Hudson's near immediate realization of his mistake after talking with Sally, leaving him alone with the big empty town that he started with. Now this is how you toy with the audience. This is the greatest second act low point in any film entirely because of the emotional and character-based juxtaposition that the audience has to grapple with, which leads right into the third act. By the time he's reached California, the rookie sensation Lightning McQueen is already defeated. No matter what way you slice it, the hole in his heart left by the friends he made in Radiator Springs prohibits him from giving it his all in this last race. But shockingly, somehow, someway, they're here. Doc Hudson, Mater, and most of the Radiator Springs gang is filling in the void of McQueen's pit crew, with Doc serving as crew chief. In this climactic last race, his friends that he made by complete chance gave up their time in Radiator Springs just to see to it that McQueen can win. But the biggest moment of the entire film occurs when Chick Hicks blows out the king in cold blood. As we cut back to McQueen, he is stricken with grief and immediately thinks of how Doc Hudson infamously crashed in his last race. With that, he takes it upon himself to sacrifice the lead, and he turns back just to make sure the king finishes his last race. The Lightning McQueen that hadn't gotten lost in Radiator Springs would have won this race and let the king crash and burn without a second thought. But McQueen has matured. He's changed. Life is more important than just an empty cup to him now. After the race is finished, we see how Chick Hicks's empty loss has defined him. He takes on all the vices that come with playing the role of the heel. Much like the trophy he's won, his victory is empty, and he is forced to retreat from a crowd of boos and flying debris. Even though McQueen didn't win, even though there's no trophy, even though he's graciously offered the sponsorship of Dynaco, he rejects it. McQueen has fully learned to love and embrace his new family and friends. He has a home now, and it's not a racetrack or a trailer or a champion stage. It's a tent full of rusty cars. It's a town in the middle of nowhere, Arizona on the historic Route 66. It's with Mater, with Sally, with Doc. And at last, Radiator Springs has life once again, all thanks to the rookie who had a change of heart and realized there's more to life than winning. Man, what a perfect film. What an awesome message. I sure hope people agree with me that this is the best movie Pixar has ever made, bar none. Well, if you made it this far, then you know that the internet still isn't crazy about this movie, and that really, really makes me sad, man. I think it's because people think that, oh, this movie could have actually been great if the characters weren't cars. It's fundamentally flawed. This, my Cadblasty acolytes, is a complete fallacy pushed by inebriates who blindly hate this movie. And I'm sure you've heard the notion that not all films are for everybody. And I have to agree. But doing this makes it so that critics impose flaws on a film that aren't really there, because they just inductively detest the film. To refute this, I would argue that the movie would be rendered completely incomprehensible without the characters being cars. That's because the film uses automobiles as a motif. The mountains are car hood ornaments, the clouds are tire tracks, the hotels are traffic cones. The personalities of the characters are all immediately inferred because of context clues we know about the characters just by looking at them. Mater's a hillbilly because we see he's a rusty tow truck. The sheriff's mustache is made up by the grill of the car. Ramon's a tattoo artist because we know he constantly changes paint jobs. We know Luigi and Guido are Italian immigrants because they're Italian vehicles. We know Flo is a showgirl because she's a luxury car from days gone by. We know that Boost, DJ, Wingo, and Snotrod are all delinquents because they're obnoxiously trendy, fast-moving cars. We know that Lizzie is a geriatric because she's an old Ford Model T. We know that Sarge supports the military and loves his country because he's a military vehicle. We know Fillmore is more socially liberal and a hippie because he's a Volkswagen bus that's been painted in wild colors. We know that Sally is out of her element in Radiator Springs because she's the top-of-the-line Porsche from the coast that moved for a more stable life. We know that under Doc Hudson's modern look, that he was once an exceptional 50s race car, and we 100% know that McQueen is an overconfident race car from his red coloring and the fact that he's covered in stickers, something that the characters frequently make fun of. Had every single one of these characters been people instead of cars, you would have lost so much of the beautiful subtext of this film, an unbridled love for car culture and classic Americana. As a full-blooded American myself who has an undying love for their country, its people, and a light interest in its car culture, this movie speaks to me more than any other work in Pixar's filmography. Even though this film is basically what if cars had feelings, it's more relevant to me in my life than to others, and that's fine. I can just look at this movie and appreciate so much about its characters and world building that I am able to appreciate that it uses cars to make faithful caricatures of the American people. I love the accuracy to real-life NASCAR races. I love the accuracy of driving on long road trips across America. I love the homage paid to the first real route in this country from Chicago to Santa Monica. I love the voice talent and how perfectly cast every single role in this film is. I love that a complete asshole is redeemed and shown that life can be so much more than their selfish desires. I love that this film was a passion project and came out during the peak of 3D animated films. I love the natural way that the main character becomes best friends and a lover to two people he used to vehemently hate. I love how Disney has gone out of its way to keep the memory of this film alive no matter what the public thinks about it or how they think its sequels tarnished the sanctity of the original. I love how the soundtrack uses licensed music that's actually a service to the film's narrative while still having ambient pieces done by Randy Newman. I just love cars, and it saddens me to know that there will never be another movie like it from Pixar, Disney, or any other animation house ever again. I hate that I have to live in a world where room temperature IQ midwits can rake this film through the coals only to pretentiously laud and boast about other films that can barely hold a candle to the narrative of Cars. If you've made it this far, I really hope you can find it in yourself to rewatch this movie, and if you haven't seen it before, I've included a link to the Blu-ray of it on the Disney Store in the description. Thanks for sticking around to the end, guys. See you next time.